Tara Calico, born on February 28, 1969, in Belen, New Mexico, was a 19-year-old college student whose unexplained disappearance in 1988 has perplexed investigators and the public for decades. Her case remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in American history, largely due to a disturbing Polaroid photograph which some claim shows her as a captive. On the morning of September 20th, 1988, Tara left her home around 9:30 a.m. for her routine bike ride along New Mexico State Road 47. She often rode this 36-mile route and was sometimes accompanied by her mother, Patty Dole. However, Patty had stopped joining her daughter after feeling they were being stalked by a motorist. She advised Tara to carry mace, but Tara declined. That day, Tara told her mother to come looking for her if she wasn't back by noon, as she had plans to play tennis with her boyfriend at 12:30 p.m. When Tara didn't return, Patty searched the route, but found no sign of her daughter. She contacted the police, and pieces of Tara's Sony Walkman and a cassette tape were later discovered along the road, leading Patty to believe Tara had dropped them to mark her trail. Several witnesses reported seeing Tara riding her neon pink mountain bike, followed closely by a light-colored pickup truck, possibly a 1953 Ford with a camper shell. Despite extensive searches, neither Tara nor her bicycle were ever found. In June 1989, a Polaroid photo depicting a young woman and a boy, both gagged and seemingly bound, was found in the parking lot of a convenience store in Port St. Joe, Florida. The woman who found the photo said it was in a parking space where a white, windowless Toyota cargo van had been parked. The van was driven by a man with a mustache, appearing to be in his 30s. Police set up roadblocks to intercept the vehicle, but the man was never identified. According to the people at Polaroid, the picture had to have been taken after May 1989, as the particular film used wasn't available until then. If this photo did depict Tara, that would mean that she had been held captive for an extended period of time, alongside at least one other captive. The photo was broadcast on the then popular television show A Current Affair, and friends of the Calico family thought the woman resembled Tara. Upon seeing the photo, Patty Dole believed it was her daughter, noting a scar on the woman's leg identical to one Tara had. Additionally, a paperback copy of V.C. Andrews' My Sweet Audrina, one of Tara's favorite books, was seen lying next to the woman. Numerous high-profile agencies were brought in to analyze the photograph and determine if the woman in the photo was her. Scotland Yard analyzed the photo and concluded that the woman was Tara, but a second analysis by the Los Alamos National Laboratory disagreed. An FBI analysis of the photo was inconclusive. In 2008, Sheriff Rivera of Valencia County, New Mexico, stated that he knew what happened to Tara and who was responsible. He suggested that two teenage boys had been following Tara on the day of her disappearance, and that an accident occurred, leading them to panic and finish her off. Rivera believed that the boys' parents helped cover up the crime. However, without concrete evidence or a body, no arrests were made. Tara's family naturally criticized Rivera for making these statements without taking action or providing proof. In June 2023, the Valencia County Sheriff's Office announced a significant breakthrough in the case. Sheriff Denise Vigil stated that law enforcement had obtained substantial evidence, which would be presented to the District Attorney's Office for review. She expressed confidence in the findings and indicated that the identities of the persons of interest were sealed by the court and would remain so until a court order dictates otherwise. This development brought renewed hope to Tara's surviving family members and the community that has long sought answers. However, at present, no charges have been filed yet, which, given the passage of time, definitely makes me question whether there's sufficient evidence to charge the perpetrator or perpetrators. At present, it remains unknown whether the girl in the photograph is truly Tara or not, but if it is, that would completely discount Sheriff Rivera's 2008 statement. In August 1973, the airwaves were filled with the desperate cries of a young boy who would later be known as Lost Boy Larry. His voice was heard over Citizens Band radio, better known as CB radio, pleading for help, claiming that he was trapped in an overturned truck somewhere in the mountains of New Mexico. Over the span of several days, the voice of Larry captivated the attention of radio operators across the United States and even parts of Canada, sparking a massive search operation. The first transmission came on August 7, 1973, when a CB radio operator in California picked up a signal from a distressed boy. Larry, as he identified himself, said that he was 7 years old and had been out on a rabbit hunting trip with his father. According to Larry, their red and white pickup truck had overturned, and his father was either dead or gravely injured. Larry's communications were filled with static and often garbled, but the sense of urgency and fear in his voice was unmistakable. What followed was an unprecedented search effort. Law enforcement agencies, civilian volunteers, and even the military joined forces to locate Larry. The search was focused on the mountainous regions around Albuquerque, New Mexico, where Larry claimed to be stranded. Despite the extensive resources deployed, including aircraft equipped with radio direction finding equipment, no trace of the boy or the vehicle was ever found. The situation was further complicated by the conflicting details Larry provided during his broadcasts. At times, he claimed his father had died of a heart attack, while at other times, he mentioned his father was alive but unconscious. Larry's transmissions also indicated that he could see searchlights from aircraft, leading searchers to focus on certain areas, but these leads proved fruitless. As the days wore on, skepticism began to grow. The possibility that the entire incident was a hoax was considered, especially given the lack of physical evidence and the increasingly sporadic nature of Larry's transmissions. However, many of those who communicated with Larry believed in the authenticity of his pleas. The emotional intensity and the consistency of his calls for help over several days led many to believe that a real boy was indeed in danger. By August 12th, the search was officially called off. No evidence was ever found to substantiate Larry's story, and no one matching his description was reported missing. The New Mexico State Police, who led the search, expressed doubt about the legitimacy of the calls, yet they could not completely rule out the possibility that a real emergency had occurred. The incident has since become a subject of speculation and debate. Some believe that Larry was the victim of a tragic accident whose body was never found, while others argue that the entire episode was an elaborate prank. Technical experts have pointed out that the battery in a CB radio would unlikely last as long as Larry's did, adding to the doubts about the incident's authenticity. Additionally, the fact that Larry never provided a last name, a precise location, or any other identifiable information further fueled suspicions of a hoax. In the decades since the incident, the story of Lost Boy Larry has taken on a life of its own, becoming part of American folklore. The case remains unresolved, and whether Larry was real or a figment of someone's imagination, his story continues to haunt those who remember those frantic days in August. The Loreto Chapel in Santa Fe, New Mexico, is renowned for its spiral staircase, which is widely regarded as a marvel of carpentry. The chapel itself was commissioned by Archbishop Jean-Baptiste Lamy and constructed between 1873 and 1878 by French architect Projectus Mouly. Its design was inspired by the French chapels in Paris and features Gothic elements like spires and buttresses. However, it is the staircase that draws the most intrigue in visitors today. The staircase, rising 20 feet to the choir loft, was built without a central support or nails, using only wooden pegs and glue. It completes two 360-degree turns and is considered an engineering marvel for its time. According to legend, after the chapel was nearly completed, the nuns realized there was no way to access the choir loft. Several carpenters were consulted, but all advised against a traditional staircase due to space constraints, suggesting instead a ladder. According to legend, in response, the nuns prayed to the patron saint of carpenters. On the final day, a mysterious man appeared with a toolbox and a donkey, offering to build the staircase. He worked in seclusion and completed the structure, then vanished without seeking payment or recognition. This led the nuns to believe that the carpenter was the saint himself, sent in response to their prayers. The staircase's construction defies traditional architectural norms. It lacks the central pole typically used in spiral staircases, instead relying on a unique helical structure supported by tightly wound inner stringers. This design has baffled engineers and architects for decades, with some suggesting that the overlapping wood segments, joined by wood glue, create a laminate that provides strength. Initially, the staircase had no handrails, making it quite daunting to use. These were added later, in 1887, by another craftsman named Philip August Hesch, along with an iron support bracket to enhance stability. Despite these modifications, users of the staircase have noted a certain springiness, a testament to its unusual design. The identity of the mysterious carpenter has been a subject of much speculation. Some have speculated the unknown carpenter with a donkey was in fact Jesus Christ himself making an appearance, explaining the seemingly impossible nature of the build. In the early 2000s, amateur historian Mary Jean Cook proposed that François-Jean Rochas, a French carpenter known in Santa Fe, was the likely builder. Evidence supporting this includes a payment record to Rochas for some sort of carpentry work on the chapel and a newspaper article mentioning his expertise in woodwork. However, this theory remains debated, as definitive proof linking him to the staircase is lacking. The type of wood used in the staircase also adds to the mystery. Some reports suggest it's made of a type of spruce not native to the region, raising questions about how the wood was sourced. This has led to further speculation about the staircase's origins and construction methods. The staircase, mostly closed to public use for preservation reasons, stands as a testament to the ingenuity of the unknown carpenter who constructed it. Hey everyone, quick reminder to like, subscribe, and share the video. Also, big shout out to my patrons and YouTube members. Now let's get back to business. On February 10, 1990, in the city of Las Cruces, a brutal attack unfolded at the Las Cruces Bowl, leaving the community in shock and sparking a decades-long investigation. On the morning of February 10th, two unidentified gunmen entered the Las Cruces Bowl shortly before the business opened to the public. Inside, they found 7 people, including a number of children who were there due to their parents' employment. The intruders proceeded to rob the establishment, obtaining an undisclosed amount of money. However, the crime escalated dramatically when the robbers decided to end each of the 7 victims before fleeing the scene. The brutality and apparent senselessness of the act stunned law enforcement and the public alike. 4 of the victims sadly passed away from their injuries, with another victim passing in 1999 of related causes. One survivor, despite being critically wounded, managed to call 911 and provide the authorities with initial information, demonstrating remarkable bravery. This call quickly brought police and emergency services to the scene, but the perpetrators had already vanished. The Las Cruces Police Department, along with multiple other law enforcement agencies, launched a comprehensive investigation. They conducted interviews, collected physical evidence, and released composite sketches of the suspects based on descriptions provided by the survivors. Despite these efforts, the case grew cold, with leads and suspects emerging over the years, but none leading to a conviction or closure of the case. Over the years, the case has seen periodic renewals of public interest in law enforcement efforts. Advances in forensic technology, along with the potential for new witnesses to come forward, have kept hope alive that resolution is possible. The families of the victims and the community continue to seek justice and answers. As of now, the Las Cruces bowling alley slayings remain an open case. Skinwalkers are figures rooted in traditional Navajo beliefs, regarded as malevolent practitioners of witchcraft who can assume the form of animals. Such individuals are not ordinary community members, but are considered corrupt witches who have chosen to forsake the established paths of healing and spirituality. Instead of using their abilities for beneficial purposes, they employ them to harm others, spread fear, and disrupt communal harmony. The history of Skinwalker lore can be traced through generations of Navajo oral tradition, passed down long before the arrival of Europeans. While the Navajo had no written language prior to contact with Europeans, their stories, ceremonial practices, and historical memories have been meticulously preserved through narration. Anthropologists studying Navajo culture, beginning during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, learned that Skinwalker beliefs were long-standing and intricately woven into local cosmologies. Though these researchers were often met with reluctance because discussing Skinwalkers is taboo among the Navajo, they confirmed that the concept preceded any modern influences. Early fieldwork by such scholars documented the taboo status of these stories, noting that Navajo people would seldom mention them openly for fear of retribution or misfortune. In traditional Navajo cosmology, the realm of the spiritual is not separate from everyday life. Shamans and medicine men devote themselves to healing ceremonies, complex chants, and the maintenance of communal and individual well-being. Their role is to restore balance and harmony and ensure the orderly functioning of the world. However, those who become skinwalkers deliberately invert this role. They receive training similar to that of medicine men, but then misuse this sacred knowledge for dark purposes. This transition typically involves breaking severe cultural taboos, such as slaying a close relative, an act believed to poison the practitioner's spiritual core and grant twisted powers. Accounts collected by anthropologists and historians indicate that skinwalkers are said to target individuals for reasons both personal and arbitrary. They are blamed for unexplained illnesses, sudden deaths, the loss of livestock, and psychological distress. In many traditional Navajo communities, people employ protective measures against them, such as using certain herbs or ashes, and seeking the assistance of knowledgeable healers. Contemporary Navajo often avoid public discussions of skinwalkers, since even uttering their names is thought to attract unwanted attention. Basically, since skinwalkers are so arbitrary and destructive, the safest bet is to simply keep your head down and hope you don't draw the attention of one. There are a bunch of historical references to skinwalker beliefs in the notes of early traders, missionaries, and government officials who interacted with the Navajo. Although these outsiders often misunderstood the cultural context, their writings provide glimpses into how pervasive the fear and belief were. For instance, certain late 19th century U.S. military records hint that Navajo scouts and interpreters were unwilling to go to places associated with what were then called witches. In terms of historical practice, there is no record of organized skinwalker cults or coven-type groups. However, there have been whispered suggestions that certain groups of skinwalkers met in secluded spots to exchange their knowledge. Such gatherings, if they ever occurred, remain largely speculative. In recent years, skinwalkers have gained immense popularity beyond their traditional Navajo cultural context. Once rarely spoken about, these entities have emerged as a familiar trope in pop culture, online, and in horror media. The Roswell crash refers to an event that took place in July 1947 near Roswell, New Mexico, where an unidentified flying object reportedly crashed on a ranch. The U.S. military initially announced they had recovered a flying disc, but this statement was quickly retracted, claiming it was merely a weather balloon. Over the years, this incident has fueled widespread speculation and theories about UFOs and extraterrestrial life, becoming a cornerstone of UFO lore. On July 8, 1947, Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release stating they had recovered a flying disc from a ranch near Roswell. The story made headlines, sparking immediate public interest. However, the excitement was short-lived. The next day, Brigadier General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force, held a press conference in Fort Worth, Texas. Here, the debris from the crash was presented as a weather balloon with a radar reflector, debunking the initial flying disc claim. In the 1990s, the U.S. government disclosed that the debris found was part of Project Mogul, a top-secret military project aimed at detecting Soviet atomic bomb tests. The project involved high-altitude balloons equipped with microphones to capture sound waves generated by explosions, apparently explaining the unusual materials found at the crash site. This unusual revelation was intended to close the case on the Roswell incident, but it only fueled further speculation. There are numerous competing theories as to what happened at Roswell. However, I'll stick to the two most credible here, since the Roswell incident is a massive rabbit hole in and of itself. One of the most popular theories is that the object that crashed was an alien spacecraft, and the bodies of extraterrestrials were recovered from the wreckage. This theory was bolstered by various witnesses and insiders who came forward over the years with stories of recovered alien bodies and advanced technology. Proponents argue that the military's quick retraction of the initial flying disc statement and subsequent secrecy surrounding the incident are evidence of a cover-up. Another theory suggests that the crashed object was a secret military test craft, possibly part of Project Mogul or another classified project. Advocates of this theory point to the era's intense research into advanced aviation technology, including experimental aircraft and balloons for espionage or nuclear monitoring. They argue that the military's secrecy and the later explanation of Project Mogul are consistent with practices of protecting classified projects. The only thing that can be said with certain about the Roswell crash is that something did indeed crash, and there was a subsequent government cover-up. In the early 1980s, the city of Santa Fe, New Mexico, was shaken by the tragic death of Father Ronaldo John Rivera. Born in Santa Fe on October 29, 1924, Father Rivera was a dedicated and compassionate priest, deeply embedded in his community. Known for his tireless commitment to assisting those in need, he was ordained in 1953 and became rector of St. Francis Cathedral in 1975, serving with distinction until his untimely death in 1982. On the evening of August 5, 1982, Father Rivera received a call at his rectory from a man identifying himself as Michael Carmelo, who claimed his grandfather required last rites near a rest stop in Waldo. Despite the late hour, Father Rivera set out to provide aid but never returned. 2 days later, his lifeless body was discovered in a field near the La Bajada rest stop. He had suffered a gunshot wound and showed signs of strangulation. A thorough investigation followed, including fingerprint analysis from his abandoned car and an FBI psychological profile, but the identity of his killer remains a mystery. Authorities arrested a suspect, George Semkes, but due to insufficient evidence, charges were never filed. To this day, the circumstances surrounding Father Rivera's slaying remain unresolved. The case grew even more perplexing 2 years later with the disappearance of Reverend John Patrick Kerrigan in Montana, under strikingly similar circumstances. Bloodied clothing and a coat hanger were found along a highway, and Kerrigan's car, containing bloodstains and a bloody shovel, was discovered nearby. However, his body was never recovered. The parallels between the two cases, including the use of a coat hanger and the victim's cars being abandoned, sparked speculation of a connection. Adding to the intrigue, Kerrigan had previously spent time in New Mexico, raising questions about whether the two priests might have shared a common link. Despite the eerie similarities, law enforcement agencies remain divided on the possibility of a connection, and no definitive evidence has ever emerged to link the two cases. The mystery deepened further in November 1982, with the death of Father Ben Carrier, whose body was found in a Yuma, Arizona motel room. His hands were bound with electrical tape, and he showed signs of strangulation. Theories about his death ranged from a serial predator targeting clergy to potential ties with broader church scandals. Yet, like the cases of Rivera and Kerrigan, no arrests were made, and the case remains unsolved. In the deserts of New Mexico, on what is now the White Sands Missile Range, stands Victorio Peak, a rugged rise surrounded by decades of rumors, legal battles, and fruitless searches. According to legend, hidden deep inside is a treasure trove of gold bars, jewels, and ancient artifacts. Many have tried and failed to prove it's real. The story began in 1937 when Milton Noss, generally known as Doc, a wandering prospector and self-proclaimed healer, claimed he discovered a hidden entrance in the peak. Inside, he said, were tunnels and rooms stacked with gold bars and other valuables. He connected the hoard to grand historical figures from General Santa Anna to Emperor Maximilian of Mexico, though no firm evidence supported these claims. Noss managed to bring out a few gold bars, if his accounts are to be believed, but kept the larger cache a secret. In 1939, his attempt to widen the cave's entrance using explosives backfired, sealing the tunnel and whatever lay within. Then, in 1949, Noss was shot and killed by a business associate during a dispute, leaving the story unfinished and the supposed treasure locked away. By the 1950s, the U.S. Army had expanded the White Sands Missile Range, placing Victorio Peak behind barbed wire and armed guards. The Noss family and various fortune hunters lobbied for permission to search, and over the next several decades, the government allowed occasional expeditions. Search teams brought modern technology to the mountain, hoping to prove Noss's claims once and for all. Yet every effort ended without confirming the presence of gold. Over time, skepticism replaced hope. Some argued Noss invented the story or greatly inflated what he found. Others insisted that if the treasure ever existed, the government had already removed it. None of these theories have been confirmed. Despite official searches and media attention, no solid proof of the Victorio Peak treasure has ever surfaced. Today, the legend remains just that, a story anchored in a few historical facts, but lacking the physical evidence needed to turn myth into reality. Some sources indicate that the U.S. Army's decisions to grant access to certain groups confirms that the treasure must exist. Personally, I was unable to find any source on what set of criteria the Army uses to grant expedition rights on missile ranges. That said, I feel comfortable saying that the Army probably doesn't just grant access to sites like this on the basis of no evidence whatsoever. At present, the mystery persists, with believers still holding on to the idea that somewhere within Victorio Peak, a fortune in gold awaits discovery. The Lonnie Zamora alien encounter occurred on April 24, 1964, in Socorro, New Mexico. And yeah, it seems that New Mexico punches above its weight in alien mysteries. Zamora, a local police officer, reported witnessing a strange object, and beings that appeared to be extraterrestrial in nature, an event that remains unexplained even after extensive investigation. The event unfolded in the late afternoon while Zamora was on patrol, chasing a speeding vehicle. His attention shifted when he heard a loud roar and saw a bright blue and orange flame in the sky. He initially suspected an explosion at a nearby dynamite shack. Following the noise, he drove into a nearby desert area where he claimed to see an unusual egg shaped object resting on four legs. Standing near the object were two small humanoid figures wearing white coveralls. As he approached, the object emitted another loud roar and began ascending vertically, leaving behind scorched bushes and indentations in the ground where it had rested. Startled, Zamora took cover behind his car and watched as the object rose into the sky, disappearing without leaving a visible trail or smoke. The object Zamora described had no visible windows or doors, but displayed a peculiar red insignia. The incident was soon investigated by local authorities, the FBI, and the U.S. Air Force under Project Blue Book. This was the government's main apparatus for examining UFO claims at the time. Investigators confirmed that the physical evidence at the scene, including burnt vegetation, landing marks, and metal scrapings, supported Zamora's account. Zamora's reputation for honesty played a significant role in how seriously the event was taken. Notably, unlike many other individuals who have had close encounters with alien entities, Zamora never sought to profit from his experience, avoiding all forms of press or publicity. Known as a reliable officer, he had no history of making extraordinary claims or seeking attention, which led many to believe that his account was sincere. Further, over the years, multiple witnesses from the area reported seeing an object in the sky around the same time, lending further credence to Zamora's story. Despite thorough investigations, including interviews with Zamora and other witnesses, the official conclusion of Project Blue Book labeled the event as unidentified. No conventional explanation, such as the old reliable experimental aircraft or weather balloon, could be confirmed. The case stood out to Dr. J. Allen Hynek, one of the leading astronomers involved in Project Blue Book, as particularly compelling. Hynek would later remark that Zamora's encounter was one of the most puzzling he had ever examined. Over the years, some skeptics have suggested alternate explanations, including the possibility that the event was a hoax or prank orchestrated by local college students. Others have speculated that Zamora may have inadvertently witnessed a test of a secret military or NASA project, potentially a lunar lander prototype. However, no definitive proof supporting these theories has emerged, and the incident remains one of the most well-documented yet unresolved UFO sightings in history. One of the more unusual claims is that the entire event was fabricated by the city to develop their tourism industry. On April 6, 1986, 9-year-old Anthonette Christine Cayedito disappeared from her family's home in Gallup, New Mexico, and has not been seen since. Born on Christmas Day, 1976, Anthonette Cayedito was of Navajo and Italian-American heritage. She grew up with her mother, Penny, and her younger sisters in a modest home in Gallup, a city that sits along historic Route 66. By all accounts, Anthonette was a responsible, bright, and caring child. She looked after her younger siblings and was known to be mature for her age, taking on significant responsibility within the household. Sadly, Anthonette had to grow up too soon, and by 6 years old she was largely responsible for taking care of the necessities of life for her younger sisters. The events of the night Anthonette vanished are central to understanding the mystery of her case. On April 5th, 1986, Penny, who was raising her daughters mostly on her own, had gone out with some friends in the evening hours. She returned around midnight, sent the babysitter home, and went to bed. The details vary depending on the source, but what is known is that the family was inside their home at 2 a.m. on April 6th, presumably safe and sound. At around 3 a.m., there was a knock at the door. According to statements later given by her younger sister, Anthonette got up to see who was there. What happened next would become the focal point of the mystery. The younger sister advised that Anthonette opened the door to someone who allegedly identified themselves as Uncle Joe. 5 years later, this younger sister would say that Uncle Joe left, and then about 30 minutes later, two men came in and abducted Anthonette. Another account suggests that a friend of Penny attended the house around 3:30 and knocked on the window of the Cayedito residence. This man, Ron Perry, denied any involvement in the disappearance of Anthonette despite this unusual event. Penny, who claimed she was asleep in another room, said she did not hear either a knock on a window or a knock on the door, and only became aware of Anthonette's absence later. Another version of the events would be given by one of Anthonette's sisters 5 years after the accident. She claimed that after the incident with Uncle Joe, another knock came. Anthonette answered it again, and this time she was abducted. Sadly, the true account of what happened on that night remains a mystery. When morning came and Penny attempted to get her ready for Bible school, she discovered her daughter was missing. Panic and confusion set in. She immediately contacted the local police, and the search began. But something weird happened almost immediately. The police didn't actually conduct a full search of the Cayedito residence for 4 days. This delay has never been satisfactorily explained. With few leads and no immediate suspects, the case grew cold. Family members were questioned, and Penny was asked repeatedly about what happened that night. She eventually stated that a local weirdo named Emo had given Anthonette flowers multiple times a day leading up to her disappearance. This lead, however, didn't go anywhere at the time. And I say at the time because we're going to come back to this lead in a bit. Over time, authorities also turned their attention to the possibility that someone known to the family had orchestrated the abduction. However, no direct evidence emerged. About a year after the disappearance, an unexpected development breathed new life into the investigation. In 1987, the Gallup Police Department received a phone call from someone who sounded like a young girl claiming to be Anthonette. On the recording of that call, the child pleaded for help, identified herself by name, and said she was in Albuquerque. Before the dispatcher could get more information, an angry adult voice was heard in the background shouting, "Who said you could use the phone?" This was followed by the sound of a scuffle and the call abruptly ending. The authorities tried to trace the call, but the lead went nowhere definitive. Still, Penny, upon hearing the tape, believed it was her daughter's voice. This call gave investigators a crucial, if confusing, clue. It suggested that Anthonette might still be alive a full year after her initial disappearance. Unfortunately, no further progress was made in connecting the call to a tangible suspect or location. Another potential break in the case came from a reported sighting in Carson City, Nevada, a few years later. A waitress encountered a teenage girl who seemed distressed and in the company of an unkind couple. According to the waitress's account, when the couple and the girl left, she found a note scrawled on a napkin that read something along the lines of, "Help me, call police." Some have speculated that this girl could have been Anthonette, older now and potentially trafficked or held captive by her abductors. Police investigated this lead as well, but like the phone call, it never conclusively led to Anthonette's rescue or the identification of her captors. Without solid evidence, this sighting remains one of the many unconfirmed tips that have come and gone over the years. Anthonette's family life was not without its challenges, and over time, some have questioned whether her mother, Penny, knew more than she revealed. In 1994, these suspicions seemed to be confirmed when Penny asked investigators if she would be in trouble if her and Emo had been involved in some way. According to the FBI, Penny confessed to the crime, even going so far as to tell Anthonette to open the door on the night of her abduction. For reasons that are entirely unclear to me, despite the confession, Penny was never charged in relation to Anthonette's disappearance. Penny subsequently died of liver cirrhosis, related to her drinking problem in 1999. Emo, the man who she claimed was involved in the abduction, was also never charged, though it appears that the FBI has been unable to locate him. If you have any information regarding Anthonette's disappearance, please contact the Gallup Police Department. The so-called Taos Hum is one of the most enduring auditory mysteries of modern times. Since the early 1990s, certain residents of Taos, a small town in northern New Mexico, have complained of a persistent, low-frequency droning sound that simply won't go away. While some folks insist they can hear it almost constantly, especially in the stillness of night, others living in the very same neighborhoods claim they can't hear a thing. Attempts have been made over the years to study the phenomenon, but no one has ever reached a definitive explanation. Today, the Taos Hum remains an open question. Is it a sound produced by some sort of machinery? A psychological or physiological anomaly? Or is it an acoustic illusion beyond our current understanding? The Taos Hum first caught public attention in the early 1990s. Although it's unclear exactly when the sound began, complaints began to mount, and residents turned to local officials for help. Some described the noise as a faint, engine-like drone. Others compared it to distant truck traffic. The fact that not everyone could hear it fueled frustration. Those afflicted by the hum struggled to sleep, concentrate, and lead normal lives. In response to local pressure, a variety of official bodies became involved. The University of New Mexico, the Los Alamos National Laboratory, and the Sandia National Laboratories were among the institutions that carried out formal studies. Researchers tried various techniques, setting up sensitive acoustic instruments, analyzing the region's geology, and even checking for abnormal electromagnetic signals. Some investigators wondered if the town's unique natural environment, surrounded by mountains and basalt deposits, could be creating low-frequency reverberations. Others suspected industrial equipment, high-voltage power lines, or even secret military installations. Yet none of these inquiries produced conclusive results. In fact, scientific teams often returned empty-handed. Sensitive recording devices sometimes picked up sounds, but nothing that definitively matched what sufferers were describing, and no sound that couldn't be attributed to common sources. Even more puzzling was that this phenomenon wasn't unique to Taos. Reports of a hum have come from various locations around the globe. Places like Bristol in the United Kingdom and Windsor in Canada have had their own hums. These international parallels raised questions about whether the Taos Hum was just another instance of a more widespread, poorly understood auditory occurrence. One explanation that's often floated is that the hum could be a type of infrasound, sound waves that are below the threshold of human hearing. Such low-frequency sounds can travel long distances and can sometimes be felt more than heard. They can be generated by a range of sources, from distant industrial equipment and wind farms to geological processes and ocean waves. However, if the Taos hum were purely a form of infrasound, researchers would expect to record consistent acoustic signatures, which they've not been able to do. This inconsistency suggests that infrasound alone might not hold the key. Another possibility is that the hum is not external at all. Some scientists suspect it might be related to tinnitus or other conditions that cause people to perceive sounds that aren't there. Tinnitus is a ringing or buzzing in the ears, often unrelated to any external source. Yet, what sets the Taos Hum apart is the consistency in its description and the clustering of individuals who experience it in a given area, patterns that don't align with tinnitus. Psychological or psychosocial factors can't be ruled out either. Mass suggestion or expectation might encourage people who are primed to hear something, anything, to interpret normal background noise as a hum. On the other hand, those skeptical of the hum's existence might dismiss subtle vibrations or faint external sounds as normal. Such subjective factors can complicate studies and make it challenging to separate facts from perception. Nonetheless, the intensity of complaints from those affected suggests that it's not merely a collective delusion. Some sufferers have reported serious disruptions to their daily lives, leading researchers and journalists alike to take their claims seriously. Today, the Taos hum remains unsolved. People in and around Taos who hear the hum continue to report its presence, year after year, while others remain oblivious to any unusual sound. The inconclusive nature of the investigations, no secret underground bases uncovered, no strange seismic anomalies pinned down, keeps the puzzle alive. For decades, strange stories have circulated about a mysterious creature known as the chupacabra, an elusive, blood-sucking animal that's said to prey on livestock. The name itself comes from the Spanish words meaning goat sucker, perfectly capturing the creature's alleged modus operandi. While many tales of cryptids stretch back deep into the past, the chupacabra is a relatively recent addition to folklore, first reported during the mid-1990s. Yet, in just a few decades, this cryptid has become one of the most talked about figures in Latin American and American popular culture. The earliest reported chupacabra sightings occurred in 1995, when several farm animals were found drained of blood in Puerto Rico. Witnesses described a strange reptilian creature, sometimes bipedal and sporting a row of sharp spines along its back. Over time, as local stories spread, more people began reporting encounters across Latin America and into the southwestern United States, and in particular New Mexico. The sheer variety of descriptions, some witnesses described it as dog-like, while others insisted on something more alien, only added to the mystery. A significant turning point in chupacabra research came when scientists and wildlife officials began examining the carcasses of supposed chupacabras. Rather than discovering a new species, they found that many of these animals were, in fact, coyotes, dogs, or raccoons suffering from severe mange or other hair loss conditions. For instance, in some New Mexico cases, strange blue dogs shot by ranchers were simply coyotes, inflicted with mites giving them a hairless, leathery look. DNA tests repeatedly confirmed the mundane identity of these so-called chupacabras, challenging the creature's existence as a new species. This pattern held true across multiple investigations, effectively undermining the core cryptozoological claims of the chupacabra. Okay, so that's it for New Mexico. Anyway, until we chill again, peace out.